Accidents, unfortunately, are an unavoidable part of life. They happen, from simple missteps to major transportation disasters. Now, while we try to prevent and put in place precautions, unpredictable circumstances, human error, and system failures can still lead to accidents. Societies, however, work hard to minimize risks and improve safety standards. In Nigeria, one of such organizations is the Nigerian Safety Investigation Bureau, which focuses on investigating accidents to learn from them and implement measures that prevent future occurrences. Tonight, we discuss the work of this agency with the Director General, Chief Executive Officer, Captain Alex Badeh Jr. Thank you very much for having us in your office.
It's always a pleasure, Larry.
And I think I would like to first say thank you for accepting the invitation to host us here. I would like you to start and just tell us about your agency.
Okay, well, the Nigerian Safety Investigation Bureau, formerly the AIB, the Accident Investigation Bureau. Back then, we were just mandated to investigate and make safety recommendations to prevent reoccurrence in air safety or aviation occurrences. But 2022, the National Assembly, in their wisdom, and the presidency then, saw the need for an expanded multimodal mandate for one agency to handle that. And of course, that was, naturally they looked to aviation because aviation is the most regulated, industry in the world. And, it used to be the medical industry, but they kill more people than we do now. So, so we have that distinction to say that, as professionals, we are very good with preserving lives. So it was natural for them to look at the AIB, and they went through the National Assembly and they expanded our mandates to become multimodal. So now we investigate occurrences in air, marine, road, and rail, anywhere Nigerian lives are involved. We have that mandate to investigate and make safety recommendations to prevent reoccurrence for any of those incidents.
So you said the bill or the legislation was passed in
2022, November 2022.
But when did you start trying to
the multimodal? Well, I took over in December of 2023. Okay. And I know they started, skeletal things here and there, but as of last year, we responded to quite a few maritime incidents, some road incidents as well, and a rail incident. There was a derailment in Kaduna, and prior to that, in 2023, they responded to the rail one in Lagos and one boat incident in Kwara. So we did a lot more last year, and as of this year, we started working on our manuals, because again, you can't just respond to accidents without having the investigative tools. Okay. So we started all that last year. I'm happy to say we're done with the regulations for the rail. For the maritime, we're done with the regulations, the investigative policy and procedures manual, and the training manual for maritime investigation. So we're done with that.
Okay, so what would you say are the unique challenges you're facing in trying to build your strength?
Our strength?
These other capacities.
As I hate to sound like a politician, funding is the first one. Okay. Unfortunately, people don't take these, safety serious unless there's an accident. So when there's an accident, everyone says, oh, what do you need? What do you need? But because we're doing such a good job, I guess the regulators are doing such a good job in certain things, especially aviation. Very few accidents and incidents. On the maritime side, of course, they have a lot of them, and the information gets to us a little late. So I would go to the second thing, which would be stakeholder acceptance. So you have regulators in all the other modes who believe they should be judged, jury, and executioner in their own case. They can't investigate what they were supposed to regulate and did not regulate effectively. So, but it's a work in progress. We're working with them. We keep engaging them. Like now, like I said, we have our manuals for the maritime and the rail ready. We have a team heading to Lokoja, Lagos, to the ports to meet NIWA, Inland Waterways Agency, Massa Port Authority, just to engage them and hopefully show them, because we've been working in silos here in Nigeria. So we're engaging them now to show them that, hey, we understand your language, we understand the maritime language, the rail language. Just because, you guys are rooted in that does not mean we can't learn or we haven't taken our skill from aviation to come down to that level. to understand it. So the challenges, again, finance, and then, stakeholder acceptance.
Let me see if we can discuss each of them, because I think each of them have their unique challenges. When you think of air safety investigation, my limited knowledge, you're talking about a site that more or less you can control. Something happens in maritime.
Yes.
The landscape is very different. It's almost like a fluid. If there's a an accident on the sea, for instance, it's a little bit different. How do you handle? How does that go?
It is different, but I'll give you a prime example. We during the East Wind helicopter crash in I think November of last year, October or November. It was in the sea. It was miles offshore. It was in the deep sea, about 50 miles offshore or so in deep sea. And with the help of the NNPC, who contracted a dive vessel, we were there. The NSIB was there. We had a team there. I visited as well. I was on the site while they were covering debris, and eventually they found the black box. So we were able to do that. So it's not difficult. Air, land, wherever, it's not difficult. It's mostly the will and expertise, and of course, again, the funding, because these things are not cheap. And recovering that operation was pretty expensive. It was almost 2 weeks of a dive vessel and crew, and these vessels, charter for anything $70,000 to $100,000 a day. So that was a pretty expensive venture. And thankfully, there was one on hand, and the NNPC were able to step up and do that. So kudos to the NNPC for staying the course and recovering. And we've gotten to the bottom of it. The final report should be out sometime this year, but we pretty much have a very good idea of what happened with that accident.
So when you say maritime, does that also cover our inland waterways and some of this? Right now, I think some states are trying to see how they can develop transportation along this line.
Oh, it does cover, and our inland waterways are a very important artery for transportation in Nigeria. Millions of people actually use our inland waterways daily. Yes, in the north. Surprisingly, in the north, you'd be surprised. A lot of people in the north use canoes and these boats to get from one end to the other. Same thing in the Niger Delta. It's just, they're regulators, but it's my personal opinion. It could be regulated even, even more. We had an accident recently where a boat driver hit a tree stump. This was in Benue, Ocholanya, last year. He hit a tree stump and people died. So that shows you that it wasn't charted. Or if it was charted, does he have the charts? Because most of the time you get these accidents, people say, oh, the driver was speeding. A lot of time it's more complex than that. They run aground, they hit stumps that stick out, and because these things might or might not be charted, or if it is charted, these boat drivers don't have the prerequisite training. They have some informal training, but there's no real regulation like with pilots to say, hey, you have to go to flight school, you have to read these manuals and know all these things. So, that is a challenge with the maritime industry, but slowly but surely, Rome wasn't built in a day. I don't expect to do everything in my tenure in office, but, once we get the ball rolling, hopefully, subsequent administrations continue.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I remember a trip I took to the Niger Delta, Warri to be precise, and just got one of these lifeboats, and the gentleman was what I considered the high sea. I was like, is there any regulation on maybe like the road, who drives on the right, who drives on? But just as you said, it appears even the gentleman himself was just a local. Some states like Lagos State appear to be trying to formalize it. Yes. They are leading
Lagos, the Waterways Agency. They are leading the charge there. They're pretty well organized in Lagos, compared to all the other states. So hopefully we're hoping, as Lagos leads everybody, at some point, we'll catch up to that.
I think the one that was really surprising to me is to find out you have mandate on investigating road accidents.
Yes, we do. So again, the Federal Road Safety are regulators. They're regulators on our roads, and we have the mandate to investigate road accidents. I will apologize that we have not been as visible as we should have been, but maybe if you have time, we have something coming up. I think I've said this in the past, the event data recorder. All cars have a black box like airplanes. They have something you can download.
Brain box or black box?
Well, we call it a black. Everyone calls it a black box. So in airplanes, it's called a flight data recorder.
Okay.
So the layman's term, it's called a black box. So they do have an event data recorder in the airplane, and there's a download machine to download that data. And with most cars, when you have a crash, a lot of time, an event, it saves that, and it's stays in that car. So a lot of times, some people have a crash, they take it to their mechanic, they fix. It's still in there that this car's had a crash or something. A car burns. If you can get the motherboard of that chip, you can link it up and you can download. So you can see what happened in the, preceding, minutes or moments to that crash. His speed, his acceleration, harsh braking, cornering, all that. You can see a lot of those things to kind of paint a picture of what happened. So, as we as an agency grow and develop, that's the next, step for us. Of course, we're trying to wrap up the Maritime and the rail.
But that's different from that of the plane, because I think the plane also has a voice recorder.
It's different, it's totally different from the one of the airplane.
Okay. So, but how are you getting the regulators to understand? Because I also feel with the number of road accidents we have in Nigeria, you have your work cut out.
We do have our work cut out for us. But then you have to remember that we know we can't do everything, so we work, or the plan is to work with regulators. We've met and had conversations with the road safety. They're very receptive. And our plan is to get these equipment, get them trained, since they're the regulators, so they're everywhere. 774 local governments we have. There's road safety somewhere.
Yes.
And an ideal scenario for us at NSIB would be they respond, they download that data, and they send the data to us here at NSIB. And we have the ability to interpret the data for them. And that way we help and we just tell them, hey, this is what happened, and they can carry on.
But you can't focus on every road accident. What are the unique ones because I have to believe you have some.
We can't. So it would be, a mass casualty event. So, a tanker here. We have a lot of those, they, spill here, a fire, they hit, hundreds of people. So you want to find the root cause of that. We can't respond to every car.
Obviously,
that would be an insurance problem and road safety. I'll leave that for them.
Okay. Now, I've left the one that is your own preserve, your first love, if I can put it that way.
Yes.
Aviation. How, I'm wondering, if you assess what we have right now, how well would you say you are in that regard? Investigation, preparedness, in terms of giving warning signals.
I would say 80%. I wouldn't want to give myself 100% because there's always room for improvement. But I'll say by and large, we're at least 80%, there. We do, we have been monitoring, looking for trends and all that. Yes. And, in collaboration with the Civil Aviation Authority, we do advise them. We have the state safety program, so we talk back and forth. And they do more of the surveillance than we do. So when they see something, they tell us, hey, this is what we've noticed, and we tell them, this is the trend and this is what might happen. Of course, the rainy season is coming now. So, of course, it's now talking about weather.
Yes.
Pilots need better weather, awareness. And in this part of the world, in spite of what the layman might say, most pilots here are very aware. 90% don't want to fly in bad weather. Sometimes there's nothing you can do, but, I've even been on, planes times where pilots delay their takeoff and passengers are upset, wondering why they're sitting there for 90 minutes. But the pilot's waiting for weather in Abuja to move because he sees it coming. So I think we're pretty, the Nigerian aviation industry is very mature now, pretty robust from the foundations of Captain Alex at the NCAA to where we are now. It's pretty robust. And as you've seen, we've not had any mass, casualty events. That's not to say it can't happen, it won't happen, but, statistically, it's extremely low, as you have seen, so.
Interesting, very interestingly low. Well, if not, I can't even remember one recently. And when I consider what I'm hearing in the US, it seems there's one plane crash or one helicopter crash. Recently, there's been, and I'm wondering, is it that we're doing better than them? Or how is it that we're managing to keep...
It's not I wouldn't call it a better, but, I liken it to Swiss cheese. the holes, and it's aligned. Sometimes these things happen, and again, like if we talk about the incident in DC with the American Airlines plane and helicopter, I used to fly that route. In fact, I flew that particular airplane quite a few times, and with the captain, and it's something that we've always wondered. It's pretty hairy there sometimes. So, but as a younger man, I was like, oh yeah, it's nothing. It seemed fun, but now sitting on this side, I can say, oh my God, that's a terrible and dangerous thing to have. And the FAA there have responded to it. So again, it's not that we do or we're doing better than them. There's a sheer volume of flying in and out in the US is way more. So there will be more accidents and even in Nigeria, as we grow, our flying increases, there will be more incidents and accidents. But I'm happy to report that even with us being the biggest market in West Africa, we have very, very few accidents here.
So your word to what do you call it? Someone that is going to fly, because I know some people will say that flying makes people more afraid than any other. Even though you said there are more road accidents, and all, but flying is the one everybody looks like, man. So are you saying for you now, if you were to talk to Nigerians, is there any, you are assuring that it seems our environment we're trying?
I would say it's very safe in the Nigerian aviation and aerospace development ministry and the space. Gone leaps and bounds, try to keep things safe. But I have to remind people too, it might be most humans, when you're not in control of a situation, there's that fear too. And, flying is not natural to us. So it's natural to be afraid, but they have to remember that these machines are built thoroughly, and the people that maintain them here in Nigeria are professionals, mostly professionals. And I think everybody tries to do a good job. And, I can assure them that, it's perfectly safe to go fly.
Oh, lovely. Now, one growing sector that I think we're doing well, just like with the marine that you were talking about, is rail. We're trying to build across the country rail and all, but we've also had a few accidents in that regard. What would you say we can take away from some of the things that happened in the rail sector?
Well, since I took office, it's only been one, which is the derailment to the Abuja-Kaduna train. And unfortunately, we haven't gone all the way to the bottom of that, but there was an issue with the track anyway. It was a track issue, not necessarily a train issue. So it could be down to maintenance, sabotage, we'll never know.
So the investigation.
Well, we have, and we did respond, but unfortunately there was not, what's the word I'll put now? There's not enough information. Sometimes with certain things, there's not enough information to go on. It's rudimentary for us. Our rail system is still coming up, so even the monitoring systems are not as robust as they should be. And rail is a very expensive endeavor. Unfortunately, it's very low return, so it will take a while for us to get there. But I'm glad the government is doing that, and we as NSIB, we're improving our capabilities to respond to that. To these accidents and incidents. Of course, there's certain equipment too that we will need or require to investigate these things properly, which will come, at some point.
Give us an understanding of the way your organization operates. An accident happens, people are looking for answers, but you also have to do things. You have a way of getting. How do you balance that? People, the burden of people need to know, and the issue of you need to be thorough and not give. How do you balance? How does that work?
I mean, there are protocols for that, so we've mirrored our ICAO Annex 13
Sorry, you're using technical terms.
Oh, International Civil Aviation Organization, which is the international aviation body, and there's protocols that they've already established for everybody. So, the first 30 days, you want a preliminary report. It could be as much as, okay, this is what happened. We know this happened. We don't know what's going on, but we will be investigating. Of course, the human mind wants to know immediately. So fortunately, we try to get the black box. We've been fortunate in the past, year to be able to access these things quicker. And we can say, hey, we know this and that happened. And we apply that to all the other modes. A lot of time we just inform. We find out 2-3 days later, first of all, which is a problem with the Maritime. And car accident situation. So by the time we get there, a lot of the evidence has been tampered with, or we still work with that, and we're able to get a fairly decent view of what happened. So the first 30 days preliminary, and we work over the next year. Ideally we should have a final report within 12 months. So we try to do that, and then we put an interim statement.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would like to understand your working, because like you said earlier, the issue is you need to work with stakeholders. And there are some people in some of these sectors who are well established, and how do you work with them?
Well, I, as the CEO, I reach out to the heads. Some respond, some I won't mention don't respond. We go. We've had MOUs with quite a few of them. We've made visits to them. The ones that respond, we go. We talk to the heads. We let them know this is what we at the NSIB do. This is what we're about. And the ones that responded are very responsive, and they're accepting of the NSIB. The unresponsive ones seem to be coming around now. We work more closely. We invite each other for certain things, and said it's a work in progress.
Help me understand. You have legal backing. This
Yes.
is legal. This is not.
Yes.
It's not like I want to work with you if you don't want to work with me.
Yeah.
Is there no way to enforce and ensure compliance?
Well, that's a political. There is. I mean, you have. It's one thing to have legal backing, but it's but it's one thing for it's Nigeria, we're in a political environment. This is a government job, so there are policies, and you're dealing with other individuals who have conflicting or interests that might not intersect. I mean, we're still, I try to tell them we're here for the safety of Nigerians, and I'm sure they are, but people have different ideas on how they want how things
Should be.
to go. So we try to balance that and talk to them, and get them there. But by and large, it would have to be a policy thing to mandate everybody to, fall in line. But it's not unique to Nigeria.
Okay.
Anywhere in the world, when you have a new agency or an agency coming to do something that an agency was mandated to do that they might not have done well, it's human nature to fight back and say, hey, try to keep your arm's length. So I just take it that way as, a learning curve, and these people will come around once they see the good work we're doing here at the NSIB.
Earlier, you mentioned the issue of funding.
Yes.
My understanding is that your regulation has a way you should be funding.
Yes.
Is it that the funding is inadequate, or is not coming in as it should?
It's not forthcoming. Unfortunately, there might be legal, or I've been led to realize there might be legal, what's the word? Caveats in there. Just because we are supposed to get that funding, they interpret their own acts different from the way our act is interpreted. So that's something we're looking to try and streamline, so we can all talk, to see how we can get that going. So initially I'll say, they don't want to comply, which is true. But again, it's the law, and in the law, lawyers are paid to argue these things out. So a lawyer who wants to earn, his wages will find a way to wiggle out of it. So that's where we are with that. But, I think with time and with, a bit of pressure and engagement, we'll get, to middle ground.
Is your agency one of those that can, generate funds?
No, we're not a revenue generating agency. We can't charge for our services. Legally, morally, it would be wrong anyway. Because I've looked at so many other ways to think about it, but the premise of the NSIB and our investigation is not to assert and blame. And our reports, we can't be called to testify in court. So if we start to try to generate revenue using certain our investigational techniques, it calls to question our motives for that investigation. We're just here for safety, not to blame anybody or make anything from it. It's just to make sure it never happens.
Is this how abroad? Is it other agencies like yours operate?
Yeah. Most of the agencies, but then they're funded. They're well funded by, their acts or their government. So it's not necessarily an issue compared to us, at the NSIB. But then, these are wealthier countries too. So
earlier we were talking about your working with other agencies,
yes,
stakeholders. I'm interested in the issue of safety, because just as you said, one of your core mandates is to help ensure that you signal maybe a trend or something so that we forestall.
Yes.
Now, if your relationship with these agencies mean that it's more or less like you are not, there's no way to enforce.
Mm-hmm.
How do you ensure safety standards?
Well, we don't enforce. Unfortunately, as I said, the regulators enforce. We just say what has happened or say what happened and tell them, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z. Now, with I'll go back to aviation, where we're fully established. When we see something and we make our recommendations, we talk back and forth with them, and they proactively try to, all our recommendations, safety recommendations, they clear them off. So they close those boxes or tick those boxes. Now, again, even in aviation, it's hard. Some of these boxes, some of the things we recommend involve funding, again, which is usually a problem. So a lot of times some of those things aren't done, and it takes a while, and we try to talk about them. Sadly, I'd say there's 50% compliance rate, even in aviation. So you can imagine how difficult it will be with stakeholders who may not be willing to work with you. But again, it's a work in progress. I mean,
but the point I'm asking is there no penalty? There's no motivation to ensure that you do what you need to do?
Well, we're not in the business of penalty, but if you ask me, the penalty will be more loss of life, and it should weigh heavy on anybody whose job is to ensure that safety. So for us here, a reoccurrence or any occurrence where there's loss of life for something that we've seen happen, that's a penalty, at least on me personally, because again, it's a needless loss of a Nigerian life. But when it comes to penalty enforcement and all that, I leave that to the regulators. That is their job. I can't go and do their job for them. I don't try to do their job. I just focus on my own job and hope that the system works to where everybody else does their job. But it does pain me. Like I said, for me, a penalty would be seeing a crash and seeing something that, we had seen and maybe we didn't do enough. That personally will weigh on me every time.
But would you have recommended a way to ensure that is done? For instance, you have signaled this should be done. Mm-hmm. Obviously, yes, you may not be the one to.
Yeah.
But when the issue comes up and you investigate and you find out this is something you had raised a point over and wasn't done. If you were to recommend, what would you have said should be a way out of this lockdown?
That's to make sure it's
make sure that it's done. Yours is to recommend.
Yeah. I would say again, more engagement, and then there should be penalties for the people whose jobs are to enforce these things. There should be be a reprimand or something, but someone should be held accountable at any turn, because at the end of the day, those of us who are working for the government, we work for the people. That's why people pay taxes out there, to ensure we get paid and we do our jobs properly for them. So there should be some reprimand for us in office.
Okay, you've been in the industry for a while, and I think this whole falls into transport. How would you say this sector has modified or modernized?
For the transport sector in Nigeria?
Yes.
It's like, we've gone leaps and bounds. I mean, in the past, when we talk about, we have more trains, especially in Abuja, we have the tram now that goes from the airport into town. The aviation industry, we've seen a new terminal, they're upgrading the radar. The passenger experience has improved here, and it's just generally safer, I think, aviation-wise. Roads as well, at least in Abuja where we live, there's improvement, and there's been a lot of investment in our infrastructure. So, first thing to stick out is infrastructure. The infrastructure is improving and is, catching up to the rest of the world.
But are you seeing this because some of this, in some of these sectors, we have the federal government, we have the state government, but it seems you're just analyzing it.
I'm analyzing holistically, because government is government to me, because we say federal, state. Most people don't know the difference between federal, state government, federal roads, state roads. A lot of people don't. A lot of Nigerians, they just know road. And most of the time they talk, it's president, it's Abuja. So I don't get to that. Again, government is government, be it federal, state, local. At the end of the day, that is for the lawyers and the legislators to argue about. For me, government is government, safety is safety.
No, but I'm asking in terms of equipment. Like, there's some airports that are under
Okay, the federal government.
Federal government, some are
yeah.
under the states government, and it seems some states now want to have bragging rights to have an airport and all that. In terms of getting all those equipments and making sure they have what they need for safety.
Yeah.
How do we ensure that?
Well, that's the job of the NCA, NAMA, and FAN jointly anyway.
Okay.
So that is their job, to ensure that they all have safety departments here who do that. So I would have to defer to them.
But you won't come up until an accident
Until an accident or we see something. We can still, but we talk to them when we see the data. So, but until an accident or incident happens, we don't come up because they all have sub-departments to handle these issues. We only come when something has happened. Because at that point, clearly there's a failure in their own systems for checks and balances.
Let's take, for instance, the road issue. Recently, we've had a lot of crashes, petrol tankers having all that. Now, if you investigate that and find something out, how do you make sure the information gets to all the people that should? Because there are a lot of stakeholders that have roles to play.
Yeah, it should be, and I would admit we're not where we need to be with the road because, again, it's a lot of advocacy with that. There's a lot of sensitization that needs to be done. This is something we need to do in collaboration with the road safety. And small staff strength, small budget we're working, but we have started conversations towards that. And like I spoke about the EDR, the whole point is to do a road show at some point, to get in the NURTW with the road safety and the bigger unions and organizations, because they're the ones who will talk to sensitize people. So yeah, I would say if I was to score us on the road in particular, we're not doing well at all right now. But again, there's so much, we're building capacity towards that, unfortunately.
Okay. Let me then focus on your own agency in here. How do you go about training your staff? Do we have the capacity in Nigeria to do the training or no?
We have some of the capacity, and we've been doing part of my my drive since I came here has been training. And pleased to say last year we trained everybody here.
Oh.
Everybody, all 330 something employees got training. This year we're training more. We've had investigators who have been here 5 years with no training, formal training. We're doing that. Unfortunately, last year with the embargo on travel, kind of made it hard for us because some of our training we have to send them to Cranfield in the UK. Then, there's the US visa. So most of the bigger institutions that do a lot of all these trainings are outside the country. This year, we're looking at some point to see if we can get those, the resource people to come to Nigeria and we can do training so we can cover, a larger pool of investigators here at the NSIB. But we've done a lot of training. We work with the ITF, Industrial Training Fund. We work with it's in Kaduna, National NITT, Institute of Transport. Yeah, we work with them as well. And we work with the airlines too, to train our maintenance guys. And even we have 2 pilots who have been hired and have been here for a while, who are pilots who haven't flown. So we've sent them off to Rano to start flying there to build some experience. So as they grow, through, their ranks in the civil service, they're gaining that experience outside as well. So they can effectively contribute to the inside.
That pilot training is essential.
Again, we're from the AIB, you had people who were, investigating accidents here who were growing through the ranks who didn't have any real airline or flying experience besides just getting your license. But getting your license is one step. Next is getting experience and getting thousands of hours. So that's what they need as well. So we're doing that now. We have another, there are going to be 12 in total finishing up their private pilot's license in Kaduna. We're sending them batches. And once they're done, they come back and they can contribute. We're going to send people to the Maritime Academy in Oran as well. We're in talks with them. They should be sending us an invoice here soon. We're sending about 10 people there. And we're getting another 10 people trained on the rail, on rail operations as well. So we're doing, the best we can, in a short period and given the lack of funding. But
it's interesting. I really like that I heard you have training with ITF and ITT, which means we have some capacity in-house.
We do have some capacity in-house. Okay. And the NCAT, Civil Aviation, College of Technology, Zaria, and like I said, the Maritime Academy in Oran. The Navy too, we're talking to them, to see how we can get some training with them. Okay. And actually the Department of State Security as well, training our drivers.
Okay, so how would you say we're doing then when it comes to the issue of modern technology?
Oh, at the NSIB, we're pretty up there, I would say. At least on the air side, we are. Me personally, too, we've been pushing to incorporate more technology, like I mentioned with the EDR. We're doing something for the Maritime voyage data recorder. We have a few things that we've budgeted for this year. Getting a LiDAR, radars.
Okay.
It's a light detection radar, and it helps, recreate accident sites, and you can see little things, cracks in metal. So we're doing a lot of that. It's just the process. It's everything in the process. I wish I could get up and go to a store and buy, or say, hey, supply me this, or let's get this. But we have to go through the process, and a lot of these things aren't manufactured here as well.
How are you coping with the change? Because one of the things I think it's very interesting for a lot of agencies is, just as you're saying, you budget, you plan before it's approved, before you start. Sometimes technology has changed.
That is definitely a thing between where you plan and when we plan to purchase
before you know something new,
it's new, so you do an upgrade. And unfortunately, because we have to get these things abroad, they're very expensive. So you're constantly explaining why you need this little item. I'll give you an example. Download cables. The download cables to download flight data recorder for certain airplanes. Sometimes they change the module, and these things are expensive. They come up over $10,000 each. And how do you explain that you just want a cable? Now, it might just look like any cable that you can go buy in the market, but again, this is particular and specific to these people, and the OEMs must recoup their research and development costs. So even if it looks like a flimsy cable, it's a very expensive cable. So you're waiting, and then the next thing happens. So it's a little tough.
But from what you're saying, it appears we have the capacity here to analyze black boxes.
Oh, yeah, we do. I would be happy to show you our lab as well. We have the capacity to analyze most black boxes, not all. Okay. The really old ones we don't. We have to send abroad to the US or the UK, like the Eastwind helicopter, which had a really old cockpit voice recorder. We have to send that to the US. But most of the new ones we do. We don't have the latest ones, which we're hoping to acquire. But, we can't download, like, say, a 787, a Boeing 787 or an Airbus 350, because those are very new airplanes that we don't even fly in Nigeria before besides foreign airlines. But most of the airplanes flown by Nigerian airlines, we have the capability to download.
Okay. Let me take you on the issue of our own, and I'm happy you spoke earlier, gave me a lot of confidence as regards our own safety, safety framework. Mm-hmm. All right. But how do we compare with countries like Kenya, South Africa?
I know. I don't know about South Africa, but Kenya, I would say I think we're way beyond them. But you have to look at it. We have a larger population too.
Okay.
So if you weigh accidents and all that, there's way more of us than there are of them. So there will be more incidents here, even though we're aiming for zero incidents. But in Africa, I think we're pretty high up there in comparison to a lot of countries our size or with our GDP. That's what I like to use, GDP or size. The only ones I would, is South Africa, but then it's different too. Okay. Totally different environments from Nigeria. But if you compare most countries about around us, we're pretty high up there, I would say. We could be better.
I think for me, and this is where your specialty, so you would know. Anytime we're talking about, as we're talking now, you keep saying our own is better, our own is better. We see, for the layman, we see like the Kenyan Airways, we see like the airlines in South Africa. You say our market is bigger. How do you rationalize?
Well, if to go technical, go deeper. If you say Kenyan Airways is actually owned by KLM mostly.
Okay.
So again, this is just, I'm sure at some point we'll get there, because I don't want to digress to a national carrier argument, but a lot of times people say, oh, this country has a national carrier or whatever. We should have a flag carrier, a national carrier, or whatever. I just don't know. That is way beyond my pay grade, but we must put that in context too for a lot of people, that a lot of national carriers are not necessarily owned by the government. They're financed by other foreign entities, just like Rwanda Air in Rwanda. Yeah. It's owned by Qatar really now. And, Qatar is building them a nice, fabulous airport. It's not. So, hopefully, as the Nigerian business environment opens up, you'll get more of these foreign investors coming here to invest, these things here. But we must be careful, because people say you want this, you want that. When you find out it's owned by a foreigner or a foreign entity,
it now starts
we're very nationalistic here in Nigeria. Our national pride is a thing.
Okay. Let me take you back. I'm really interested in your own, how do I put it, your experiences.
Mm-hmm.
You've spoken about your past.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get from flying into investigating?
Well, I've always been interested in, I'm such an accident investigation nerd, geek, or whatever. So, it took a bit of convincing. A few people said, hey, I'm interested in doing this job. I think I can I can make a change. And of course, it's Nigeria where, say, oh, you're young. Are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I think, give us a try. And hopefully in 5 years when we're done here, when my term is up, hopefully I would get, a decent score saying, hey, he didn't go there and mess up. So, it wasn't open. It wasn't open. Most of these jobs are not open.
Yes.
What's the word? The competitive process. It's not open for application, but it still takes going out and putting yourself out there
and then having the background and the experience,
yes, and the experience for it, which is, and if you see in the aviation industry, all of us here all have some sort of knowledge or background to do what we're doing. So that really helps here.
How did you find it? The shift from
from the flight deck to the desk.
To being an administrator.
So being an administrator it's the same thing as being an airline captain. Really, it's just administering more people.
Okay.
You fly with a crew of 5 or 6 other people, and you're the captain. It's the same thing. You're managing those people, and then you're flying. The Airbus I flew 196 seats from point A to B, and then you have the crew you must manage. That whole situation. So I just took my knowledge from there, and again, it's everything is about equity, fairness, and balancing the need, the chase for companies' profits, and the operation and all that, the human side. So I just took that, and I operate the same way here. It's there is a budget I must fall within, there are rules I must follow, but I must look at the human as well, the human side of it, and that's just how
have you been adjusting to the bureaucracy?
I'm fully adjusted. I understand it. I hate to say that I'm adjusted to it because you never want to adjust to bureaucracy because you become a bureaucrat, which is what I'm trying to avoid, becoming a bureaucrat. But I try to manage both sides.
Okay.
Yeah.
So looking at, I'm happy you spoke about the 5-year mandate. What's your goal? Were you looking at trying to leave as your trademark here?
Well, first of all, make sure we have fully qualified investigators, trained, ready to go. And my personal goal here would be that one of the younger investigators take over from me, leaving here. And then, ultimately is to fulfill our full multimodal mandates to get us to where we need to be a full multimodal accident investigation agency, rooted, now not just rooted in aviation, but with the expertise to deal with maritime confidently, the rail and the road. So Nigerians, at least when there's an accident, they know, they have confidence that the NSIB will be there and will be there to tell them what happened to prevent it from happening and give them hopefully reassurance to take their next journeys again.
Okay. Do you think you'll be looking at making the agency bigger? Because I don't know.
No, we'll have to grow. Yes, we have to grow.
Because right now it looks like you're just here. I don't know if you would need.
Oh, we are. We're in Lagos. We're in Enugu.
Okay.
And Kano, actually.
Oh, nice.
Unfortunately, people don't see us because we're always co-located in airports because we were the AIB. But moving forward, we're opening a regional office in Warri and in Yola. So, because we have the northwest in Kano, Yola will be the northeast, and we're actually in the city there. Same thing for Warri. We're going to be in the city. Here at the NSIB, we have our HQ that we're building here at the airport, but we're going to have an office in the city as well in Abuja. So we're where the people can see, because the citizens really want to see us as opposed to us being in the airport. No one knows who we are here. And as we do our jobs and we go out there, hopefully they'll see more of us and get to know the NSIB.
Okay. Now, one of the, I think, worrying signs of this time is climate change.
Yeah.
And I was, at least this morning, I picked up on, it was a crash in the United States, had to do with weather or something that happened. Considering climate change, considering the fact that your work has to do with trying to mitigate incidents, what's your outlook going forward? What new challenges do you feel we have to consider now?
I'll give it an unorthodox. It's away from the typical answer everyone gives. Climate has always changed. If you look at the history of the Earth, the climate has always changed. We've had the ice age. Yeah. We've had, you look at rock formations, we had volcanoes to do. So climate has always changed. We need to change with climate. We need to adapt. So for me, it's more training. Again, with everything happening in climate change, there's more training, more awareness of it. Again, like a pilot, you should be aware of the weather. You mentioned that crash, and interestingly, I was looking at that. But, being the pilot and investigator, if you look at it, it was an owner-operated airplane. The owner flew his own airplane. He departed at night.
Yes.
He flew all night. So his window of his circadian rhythm, he flew at night, flew to LA, got there in the morning. So you don't know his mindset. The weather was the weather. He knew the weather was there, so we don't know. But if you look, he was lower than he should have been at where he crashed, and even so, we'll wait for investigators to get to that. But a lot of the time, we blame climate change for a lot of things. You can't blame nature for responding to our activities on Earth or doing what nature does. It's how we adapt to these things, like our thunderstorms here. How, as a pilot, to not go fly into a thunderstorm. They're strong, you wait it out. Our storms are 30 minutes an hour. You wait on the ground, or you hold, or you divert, take some fuel, and come back. With Maritime, I know the NAMA and the Federal Airports Authority are improving the nav aids. They're putting more lighting on the runway. So, humans are resilient, so we find a way around nature every time. So, again, for us, I think we're just going to find a way around nature.
Okay, but from your own perspective, do you feel a lot of times it's more pilot error than most of the others?
No, I say human error, not pilot error, because everybody blames the pilots.
I hope you are not saying this because you are a pilot.
No, the reason why I say human error, because everybody says pilot error. But
Yes.
There's always, no crashes, there are always layers.
Okay.
We never know.
Yes, true.
There are layers to everything, and if you talk, say like a maintenance, something happens with an airplane, no one knows. They just say, "Oh, the pilot might have been X, Y, and Z." But the pilot is not the only person. The whole operation, that airplane, there's maintenance, dispatch. So there's so many layers. ATC. There's so many layers that should have caught it. But ultimately, he who wears the crown, heaven's the head. So everyone blames the pilot. It says pilot error, but I always say human error or system error. System failure, because it's a system. The whole operation is a system, and there was a failure somewhere. Now, you do have the 10% as the pilot, but everybody at first blame the pilot.
Yes.
And when you start to look deeper, even if a pilot makes a mistake, you can go down and look at his training. Because someone would say, "Oh, a pilot did this, he shouldn't have done that." If you start going deeper into the training and how he got there, you would see where he might have, this training was deficient here, or he might have not made it here, but someone let him go. So are you going to blame that pilot now? It's a system that got him there. So I look at it more as human error or system error, more than pilot's error.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. I think to a large extent, it appears you have your work cut out in Nigeria. But I would ask you one last question. As DG, what keeps you awake at night?
Keeps me awake?
Yes.
Okay.
In the course of your job, what
keeps you awake?
Maybe more that...
every day I wake. If you're asking what keeps my worst nightmare is an accident or a crash or a huge accident, every day I'm like, oh my God. I don't turn off my phone because... And when I sleep, I'm like, oh God, I hope it's not this or that. Or let's hope nothing happens. So of course, you don't want any mass casualty event. You don't want people to die. It happens, but every time I hear a tanker, an explosion, there's another one a few days ago, a boat. I'm like, oh my God. So that keeps me awake. But it's still that's what drives me to go to work. I'm a morning person. I come to work here. That's what brings me to work too. It keeps me awake and it brings me to work because I'm trying to do my own bit. So when I leave, I know that I contributed to reducing loss of life and making Nigeria safer.
I'd like to say thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Larry.
Very good.
It was a pleasure.
Pleasure is mine.
Yes, sir.
Safety in transportation is not just regulations, it's responsibility. That, I'm told, is an industry principle. And the place of responsibility cannot be overemphasized. Well, that is our discussion this week. Do you have questions or reactions? Please reach out to us on our social media handles and the email address on the screen. We also have past episodes on our YouTube channel. You can search for Newsnight on that playlist and just take your pick. That's it for today. Bye.